Hello, everyone. I'm super fangirling and excited to have Deanna Schober on today. And we actually I've been following her and listening to her podcast for years at this point. And this was actually the first time we got to see each other, even though it's through Zoom. And it was super exciting for me. So I'm super, 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 and I know I use that word a lot of times, excited to have her on to talk about having peace with your body image today. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and then we're going to go ahead and jump right in.
Oh my God. I don't know if I can follow up that introduction because I'm so excited to meet you. I'm Deanna Schober. I am the co-founder of Built Daily with my husband, Tony, and I'm also the co-host of the Fitness and Sushi podcast along with my husband, Tony. I'm a mom. I've got 4 kids ranging in ages from 9 to 24, like two in between, one of which who is sleeping in the next room and her alarm has been going off for 30 minutes. So I apologize if that is showing up. And I'm a little worried that she's not going to make it to work. But so I also, let's see, I help women usually between the ages of like 40 and 60-ish to improve their relationship with food, body, exercise, and mind. We call it our ideal body formula. Your ideal body not being societal's ideal, but being your unique, what it looks like for you when you have a healthy relationship with food, body, exercise, and mind. So I've been a coach for, gosh, since we've been doing this since 2011. So a long time. We're doing it a
A
long time.
long time. And so one of the things that you probably don't know is that when I first started listening to your podcast, that was like my real first introduction into how to stop using eating disorder techniques to really
Mm-hmm.
get to a space where I actually liked my body. And then I realized that it wasn't even about that. And so, like, through listening to your podcast and really just internalizing what is actually happening, I was able to kind of ditch those habits that I developed through having an eating disorder that said, if you want to lose weight, eat less calories and exercise more. But no matter how much I did that, I was still not at peace with my body, no matter what size it was, because it was really a control thing. And the control is what existed as chaos in my brain that would never really allow me to get to peace. So I say all that to say, can you share your journey with body image and how you kind of got to this point?
Yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely. And I love what you just said about you were using eating disorder techniques to control your body. I've never heard it put that way before, but that is exactly what diet culture is. It's using eating disorder techniques. It's disordered eating habits. I mean, I hate to go all the way back to age 12, but that's around when it started for me.
Same.
It was, yeah, I mean, it was like middle school. And I somehow latched on to using, I mean, somehow it was everywhere. Like all of us were doing this, where it to deal with stress or to deal with growing up and feeling awkward and out of place and like you're not good enough. I started to try to control my body with diet and food and exercise and just it turned into, by the time I was 14, it turned into full-blown anorexia. And that was because I was trying to be a certain weight for the drill team that I was joining, because we did weigh-ins. I mean, this is like, I've always said, this is like sanctioned by the society around us, these disordered eating patterns. And so I stopped eating for a while. I started eating again, and it's like I recovered from that, but never lost that relationship with food and that relationship with my body. It just got worse and worse. I was constantly on diets in high school. Had my kids. After each of those kids was yo-yo dieting back and forth, back and forth. I was either like using food as a way to deal with life and all the stress I was under as a mom, a young mom. I had my first child when I was just shy of my 22nd birthday, and using that food or using dieting, and it was just back and forth between those two things for a decade of new motherhood. So like in the middle of all that, I'm also yo-yo dieting. I felt like my body was my worth since the age of 12, and it was my value. It was the only thing that I could set myself apart with. I felt I had very low self-esteem. And I mean, I think I'm telling everyone's story here. It's just, it's such the common story that I hear through for women. It's just, it's so, our society has put that pressure on us from girlhood. As soon as we are old enough to know, to open our eyes and view the world, we get the message that your body and your attractiveness and those, like the size that you fit in and whether or not a man finds you attractive is the most important thing about you. And you have to perpetually be 20 years old with your, 19-year-old body for the rest of your life. So I dealt with that in the same way that so many of us did, which was to yo-yo diet back and forth and just feel constant stress and anxiety around it. And then I went through a divorce from my first husband. We had 3 kids at that point. So I had 3 little kids. The divorce was messy. There was infidelity. And so I came out of the marriage feeling like even worse, like even worse than I did before, because I mean, it was almost like proven to me that I wasn't good enough. And so I went into dating after that, scared, like I was going to be alone for the rest of my life. And it was going to be because of my body, and it was going to be because of the way that I looked and because I wasn't sexy enough. And so I was at the tail end of yet another yo-yo diet when I eventually met Tony. And when we met, everybody was like, oh my God, what a great guy that he's like willing to date a single mom. And, it's just like, it was so perpetuated still into like, you're not good enough. And so I just felt this immense pressure to hold on to this like hot guy that didn't bring any baggage into the relationship. And, he was just this white knight on a horse that had ridden in and saved me and my children. And, people meant well back then, but that was the message that I got. And so it just made it worse. And so I did not know, or didn't realize at the time, that he was dealing with an eating disorder at the time. And he had been since college. And he was trying to follow bodybuilder techniques while, and he would be able to do that for a while, and he'd get really lean and like really have this hot bod. And then he would fall off the wagon, or he would have like one cheat weekend and it would turn into a 30-day nonstop binge of like 10,000 calories a day. And so he's going through this, and he's got the value system that his body is his worth. I've got the same one. I'm bringing my own disordered eating patterns into the relationship. The 2 of us together was a nightmare. We just were like, we were having an active eating disorder together. I turned very like orthorexic in that time because of the pressure to be perfect so that I wouldn't lose this great new guy, which he's pretty great. But
I mean, we do love Tony, and we love also Tony. Love you too.
Yes, thank you. Like, it's okay. Like I could stand on my own 2 feet, but at the time I didn't think so. And I had leaned out with him, and I found that I was really good at being restrictive, like for a longer period of time than he could be. And so I had, along with him, following the techniques that he was using, I had gotten a 6-pack. I like had a really muscular body. At that, I had what I always thought would have been the body of my dreams at that time. And people were like, oh my God, you have 3 kids and you've got abs. And it was just the constant reinforcement of, you look so great. And so that really did me in, because then I was like, I can never lose this. I can never, ever, ever go back to being that frumpy mom who wasn't loved and who was left. And it was just a turning point, I think. And we both hit rock bottom together. Tony was ready to heal his eating disorder before, like he was ready. He was sick and tired of the up and down. I think he was sick and tired. He knew it was bad for his health. And so I kind of went along with him. We both started to heal our relationships with food. We healed, like, as bad as we were together in our eating disorder, it worked in our favor when we were both healing, because we were helping each other through that. And so I had to detach my self-worth from the way that I looked. It's still, I'm not going to lie, it's still a struggle to this day. It's nowhere near what it was. It's always, I have the tools now for it. I consider myself in recovery, and I know how to deal with those thoughts when they come up, but they're still there. And I don't know that they're ever going to go away completely. I like to be honest with that, because I don't want to like give anybody false hope. But but it is something that I can deal with, and it's not taking up my mental space all day long anymore. So that's where I'm at today.
Yeah, and something that you said that really struck me, just because I think you are telling a lot of people's stories. Um, but my therapist always says if you have a behavior, it's related to some deep-rooted emotion, which mine is usually fear.
Mm.
And I'm making a connection with you because you're saying, I had this behavior of controlling the food, but the fear was rejection. Right. So, like,
Right.
I've been rejected in my relationship, what feels like rejection, right? I've been rejected because when you're a young mom, and everyone else is like out partying and doing all the things, you don't belong with the people who are your age.
Right.
It feels like rejection. And so in order to fit in, you do things to make your body look like you feel like it needs to look to fit in with the societal norms or to be better than the societal norms. And I can
Yeah.
completely resonate with that because I think that when we have that core belief, especially like 12 is a very pivotal age to like
Mm-hmm.
either develop self-esteem or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have that at such a young age, it is a constant feeling that I can't control my external circumstances. People can
Yeah.
reject me, cliques in school can reject me, all these other places can reject me. But the thing that I can control is my food consumption because I can't be rejected on how I look. I can control that, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Dang.
such a yeah, it's so like I never really connected all of my behaviors to one fear until I started going to therapy. And she was like, okay, so you fear rejection. And every time I would tell her something, she'd say, okay, so the fear is rejection. And I'm like, how are all of these things associated to rejection? And she was like, because you have a core belief that you weren't good enough. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, so everything is attached to that. And,
Yeah.
something that you also said was like, you have this internal dialogue and it's chaos. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
don't eat the food, do this diet, eat more of this food. And you talked about exercising to get rid of the calories that you are consuming. Like there's that whole piece that's happening in your brain. But externally, everybody is feeding that sense of stability and lack of rejection and belonging by saying, "Oh, you look how good you look. Look how good you look. Look how amazing you are," based on just what your body looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
that
crazy.
it feels insane because I can say like, yes, we have to be attracted to someone's physical appearance, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a thing. People, you have to have a physical attraction. And there are so many other facets of a person that we do not put as much pressure on, which is why the diet culture is a multi-billion dollar industry
Right.
and therapy is not yet. Like it's like we're
Right. It
taking
should
care of
be.
Yes, we're
Yeah.
taking care of our bodies, but that's just a symptom of what's going on with our emotions. And no
Yes.
one wants to deal with what's actually going on with emotion, partly because the diet culture would not be making billions of dollars,
Right.
and nor would the beauty industry and all these other things
Right.
that we buy into because
Cosmetic surgery. Yeah.
yes, yes. So how do you feel like your view of your body and your body image and just the constant control of food um really prevented you from having peace?
Oh, wow. I mean, you just nailed it. I mean, it was like there was so much inner turmoil. There was like who I wanted to be versus who I really was on the inside. I think that the big thing that has given me so much peace is coming on podcasts and like working with people and being honest about what that was like and what it's still like for me. Because now back then I felt like there was two versions of me. There was the me that was like posting on the early version of Instagram with my fit selfies and those kinds of things, and taking the before and after pictures of things and like posting them online and getting that feedback and loving it. And then behind the scenes, just knowing that my life felt completely out of control and I was living almost like this double life. And that caused me so much turmoil. I have always considered myself a very honest person who really values trust and authenticity. And so that definitely was causing so much turmoil for me back then. And just talking about this stuff has given me a ton of peace. Um, I think another thing is just changing my belief systems, my core belief systems, like you were saying, where I'm starting to work toward, at first I was starting to work towards body positivity, and then I was starting to realize that that's still objectifying your body. And now it's like I either like this thing or I don't like this thing. And to me now, I'm trying to move into embodiment where I am just
Mm.
living in my body and I'm having an experience in it. Some of those experiences are amazing. Some of those experiences are not so great, and that's just part of living in a human body, and trying to like just enjoy that ride and get my mind into that instead of my mind constantly be thinking about how do we control this thing, how do we whip this thing underneath us into shape, that kind of a feeling. It's more like um turning this off sometimes and just getting into the sensations and the feelings and noticing like the things around me. I have like exercises that I will do for myself sometimes. Like one that I recently did was imagine that in 24 hours I was not going to be able to see color anymore. Like everything was going to be in black and white. And I just started looking around and I had so much gratitude for the ability to see color. It's just these like little things. And when you're filling your brain with those kinds of things, the things that bring you pleasure and delight and gratitude, you don't have room anymore for the constant story of who you're supposed to be, what everybody's thinking of you, what you look like, what angle you should be standing at, like all the crazy things that used to go through our heads. And so that has, and just also the ability to know that when, just because those thoughts are happening doesn't mean I have to get caught up in them. And I can notice them and label them as eating disorder or disordered body image or whatever, and kind of be like, thank you, but no thank you, and change the thought patterns. That helps, I think, more than anything, is just knowing, having the skill. So I always tell my clients, it's like, I'm not going to give you some kind of magic wand where you just change overnight. I'm going to give you skills. And that's how it works, is you have to develop skills and use them. And that's one of my skills, is to recognize when my thought patterns are not empowering, they are disempowering, and they are taking me down and causing chaos, and get myself to that place of peace.
Yeah, and you made me think of something too, is when we're thinking about peace, peace is not controlling and forcing something to happen. It really
Mm-hmm.
is allowing. So,
Yeah.
when you're thinking of the things that you just mentioned, like being able to look at the colors around you and really be grateful and have gratitude toward the actual things that your body can do. Look how I can see these colors, and I'm going to appreciate these colors because I can see them. It seems kind of like strange for that
Yeah.
behavior to happen, but you're really allowing yourself to appreciate your body instead of
Mm-hmm.
being in a space where you feel like if you could control it enough, you would have this feeling, which you never get to, by the way, because
Right.
even when you had those six-pack abs and you looked amazing, you had the inner turmoil. That wasn't peace.
Right.
So no matter how much you were able to control what you ate, how much you were able to control your workouts, internally that peace still existed because it was still rooted in control, and peace doesn't
Mm-hmm.
come from control, it comes from allowing. Something else that I'm so glad that you said is that the thought patterns don't go away, and they
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
um I remember somebody saying to me once, just eat, and I'm like, that's like telling someone who has depression to just be happy. Like,
Right.
it's not about the food. It's not about the eating. It's about what's going on up here that makes me feel like I have to control that thing. So, in order to just eat, I need to just deal with all of these narratives that are
Yeah.
happening in my head. And I always envisioned it like a nagging grandma. Like that's just how I
Yeah.
envisioned this thing. Like,
I
don't
love
eat that.
that.
It was like, don't eat that. That's gonna make you fat. Don't do that. You're gonna
Yeah.
regret that. Like constantly all day long. And one of the things that I had to do was very similar to yours. When that nagging thought would come into my head, I would kind of like replace it with an affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that really is what helped me to get out of the mindset that if I ate this, I was bad. because that is
Mm-hmm.
how I felt. It
Yep.
wasn't that I wasn't even labeling the food bad, which I also, found through years of listening to things and researching that that's not even what you're supposed to do. But the food wasn't bad. I was bad if I ate the food. And
Right.
that creates this shame and blame cycle that's horrible. Um, but in order for me to change the thought process, when those nagging thoughts would come into my head, I had to replace it with an affirmation. So it would be like, for instance, don't eat those cookies, you're going to get fat. I would say something like, you deserve to eat whatever you feel like eating right now. So it was
Mm-hmm.
like, it doesn't, because I got into the diet culture has that healthy culture somewhere in there
Mm-hmm.
where it's like,
Wellness.
yes, there it is, where it's like, if you eat the good food, then
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to eat. And so I wouldn't eat anything that had processed sugar. And I do know that that is healthy for your body, but it wasn't just the not eating, it was the shaming of
Yeah.
eating that was like this whole internal struggle there. And I had to be like, you know what? If you want the cookie, eat the cookie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you deserve to be able to make a choice to eat a cookie and be okay with that choice and
Yeah.
be at peace with that choice.
Yeah.
And that really is allowing yourself to not experience shame every time you eat something or every time you skip a workout. Like, you don't have to shame yourself for that. Um, so how did shame kind of add into that internal narrative that you had?
Well, first of all, I want to tell you, like, that's subconscious reprogramming, which is
Oh,
what
for
you were just
sure.
doing, is like, that is what we do. That's exactly what we do in our program, is to help people do subconscious reprogramming, which is like recognizing the old disempowering, it's neural pathways. Like, I think that learning about how my brain worked was so empowering for me, because I understood that once those neural pathways have been created, your body is your worth, food is good or bad, those things, they never leave your brain. They have created a groove in your brain, and it's like they either light up or they don't. And so sometimes, because of triggers, they're going to light up, and you just recognize it. You're like, oh, that's the old narrative happening. It's lighting up, it's there, it's never going away. And then you fall to your new programming, which you have to work on, which is what you were doing with affirmations. So kudos, you figured that out, and that's amazing. um what did you ask me? I was so excited that you were like subconscious reprogramming yourself.
I
What did
said,
shame have to do with it?
yeah, how did shame like involve itself in that internal narrative that you had?
Oh, I mean, definitely. I had picked up the message from diet culture that um good people, and nobody ever says it like this, but this is what we pick up, and this is how I can word it. Good people can control themselves with food. I mean, I was reading a list of the messaging, like the stuff that people used to actually say in the 90s and the early 2000s, when I was kind of like coming of age. And the things that we used to say back then, I was like, I forgot about that. But it was like, a moment on the hips, a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. Um, Nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, those kinds of things. It's like, you're weak, like you can, like, be strong, be strong, be strong. So, and you're weak if you eat these certain foods, and if you can't control yourself, or you're lazy, if you're not working out. No pain, no gain, that's my least favorite of all time. I hate the term no excuses too. Like, I just hate it. It's just so shame based, and no, it just, all those things have no nuance whatsoever. And so we pick up a lot of that shame about just our actions, much less, if you are looking in movies, like, think about all the movies that we saw in the 90s and the 2000s, where the girl loses weight, she straightens her hair, here I am with like curly hair, she straightens her hair, she gets contacts, and now the boy is in love with her. Like, how many times did we get that message? And it's so like, if you are if you are not that version of that girl, the after version, you feel shame about it. Like, oh, this is how I'm going to get love in society. This is how I'm going to be valued in society. And so you feel so much shame for that. And that shame pushes you towards you're trying to get rid of that shame by doing these actions. And that's the thing, what you said, you have to get down to the root of it. Otherwise, it's just going to keep rising. Those wounds do not go away unless you get down there in the stuff and you actually deal with it. So I always tell people when they're coming in and asking us about our program, and like it's not it, I mean, it's health and fitness, but like it's really life coaching, because that's what we do. We have to get down there in there about your beliefs and about the wounds that are driving you towards why has this been so important to me? Why have I ended up in the position that I'm in? Because if you don't get down there and take a look at what, like, why do you have shame around your body? We have to reprogram that message for you. Why do you have these feelings around food? We have to reprogram those messages for you and install a new belief system. So for me, it was definitely shame was probably the main driver. You know, it's embarrassment, it's feeling less than, feeling unworthy, not having a sense of inherent self-worth, you know, where I'm worthy just because I'm here and I don't have to prove anything to anybody.
Yeah.
Every single one of us looks at our kids and says, you don't have to do anything to prove, especially like any baby. Look at any baby and you can say, you don't have to prove anything to me. You are worthy just because you exist. And we don't do that for ourselves.
Mm-mm. Not even close to doing it for
No.
ourselves. We literally pick apart every single mistake we make.
Right.
And that makes me think of, I share with my listeners a lot about how I developed perfectionism mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, you know, deep rooted in core beliefs too. And over a period of time, I finally started realizing, like, when I was observing myself from that balcony view, like, oh, this is perfectionism and that is
Mm-hmm.
not okay. We got to figure out why that's up here. And you said something that made me think of why my body image is part of that perfectionism thought process. And it's because if I can control my food, and obviously I don't feel this way now, but when I'm thinking about how it started, if I can control my food, then when people look at me, they'll see how perfect I am because of how my body looks, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it was this, it was definitely rooted in the acceptance, but it was more like, if you can lose weight, if you can have abs and have birthed several children,
Yes.
right? Like that makes you perfect. And so
Mm-hmm.
perfection is what makes you good
Mm-hmm.
in your own mind when other people look at you. So if their perspective is, oh, you're doing something that a lot of other people can't do, okay, that checks off something on my perfectionism, you know, wheelhouse in my brain. And it I can tell you that the best experiences that I've had with exercise and with food have come after doing the reprogramming of my brain, figuring out the
Mm-hmm.
core beliefs that existed, and really understanding the process of peace. And, you know, I have people who will say, you know, well, what are you working on at the gym today? And I'll say, I don't know. And they'll be
Yeah.
like, well, how are you? You're on your way to the gym. Like, why don't you know? And it's because I used to have the entire month planned out, which body parts I was going to punish. By the way, punish
Mm-hmm.
is how I treated my body. Which body parts am I going to punish because they don't look the way that I want them to look?
Yeah.
And it was all scheduled out. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I literally wait until I walk in the gym and then I go, what do I feel like moving my body? Like, what do I feel good about doing to move my body today? And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what it is. Is it going to be a hit workout? Don't really feel like doing that today. Maybe I'll just lift some weights. And I'm not saying that that is the approach to getting six pack abs or any of those things. I'm
Yeah.
saying it was the healthy way for me to be able to walk in the gym and the only focus to be, you're going to move your body because moving your body makes your brain feel better. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how long I'm going to be here. I don't know what workout I'm going to do, but that's going to make me feel better. And then the thing that happened with eating, like I kept hearing people talk about intuitive eating. Well, in my brain, intuitive eating was just, if I feel like eating it, I'm going to eat it, which is
Yeah.
not what it
No, we get a
was.
lot of that misinterpretation as well. Yeah.
And I had to recognize why I was eating certain things.
Mhm.
So I really had to, I kept a journal. Like, okay, when do I feel like eating sweet food? When am I okay with eating these type of things? And it wasn't good or bad, but what's the pattern? And I
Mhm.
started to understand that when I was stressed, I went to the sweets because
Mhm.
I was using willpower to control my food and I didn't have enough willpower if I was dealing with stress.
Yeah.
And so I was going to eat whatever it was that was in front of me. And so I say all that to say, like, this entire process starts with your thinking. It starts with your brain. And that is the root of it. You have to figure out your core beliefs before you can ever figure out why you're restricting or overeating. You have to
Right.
figure out what you're fearing and what you're holding on to before you can ever figure out why you're punishing yourself with your workouts instead of doing workouts that move your body.
Yeah.
Um, and so you said, really reprogramming those parts of your brain. And I was going to ask, what are some other workable steps without giving away your entire program? Because that's not what I want you to do.
That would be impossible. Don't worry.
But what are some other, like, if you had to tell the you back when you were deep into that whole diet culture and all of the trauma that you experienced there, if you had to tell her three things that she could do to really get to a peaceful place with her body image, what would those top three things be?
Well, I can do this with enthusiasm because and I don't think that she would mind me sharing this, but my 19-year-old daughter just went through an eating disorder last year when she was 19. She's 20 now. Which talk about the worst possible situation. It's like seeing the monster that almost took you down coming for something that you care about more than yourself. Like
That gave
that
me
was
chills. That really
it
just
was
gave
I
me
mean, and I'll
chills.
be honest, it triggered me back into
Mm.
problematic. Like I was just like, there was this part of me that was like, well, if she's going to be sick, I'm going to be sick with her. And it was really like messed up. The thinking was really messed up, but I helped her. She's recovered now and she's so proud of herself. And
Yay.
I am so proud of her as well. But I will tell you how I helped her with that, with three things. The number one thing was like, you're never going to be able to control what anybody thinks about you as much as you think that you can. Um, and so you have got to make sure that you are living the life that you want to be living, because at the end of your life, you're going to look back and you're going to regret all the time that you wasted trying to control other people's situation. I think number two is that these things are trauma responses. These things that we do are trauma responses. And so if you just treat the symptom of, and this is what it ended up eventually at, was, she was reacting to trauma. And so we got in and we worked on the trauma, and that naturally helped things too. So understanding, I think the theme of that is to really understand yourself, learn to understand why you do the things you do, understand your thinking patterns, your relationship with food, your relationship with your body. Those things are so important. And then I think the biggest overall theme was the mindset shift is to get away from self-control to self-compassion, self-love, self-care. It's like, instead of trying to control this person or this thing that you are, you move towards treating yourself as if you were your own best friend, your own kid, your own loving caregiver. And that, like, things will fall into place very naturally when you start to think of it that way, instead of like trying to fit into societal standards.
That is so, so beautiful. And it's a full circle moment in this podcast
Yeah.
because that's what we talked about earlier. It is getting rid of the thoughts that you have to control everything to get people to perceive you a certain way because that keeps you safe from what you fear based on your core beliefs. And it
Right.
is allowing yourself to be embodied and existing in the world the way that you should be able to, with no indication of what anyone else feels about it. And I think
Yeah.
that, I mean, that is like the quote of the podcast right there. Like that's so good. Um, so I'm gonna ask one last question because we're running out of time. But um if you if you were to, and I know that you said, your daughter and not your former self, but if you were to speak something into that 12-year-old that was making a choice between self-confidence and self-hate, what would be one thing that you would say to her?
Oh, wow. I've done through therapy, I've done a lot of inner child work, and I've spoken to that 12-year-old many, many times. Um, I would say that the world is tough, and it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be a million people out there with a million different opinions, values, and the act of trying to fit in with all of those things is going to destroy you. And it's going to destroy your relationship with yourself. And really, your relationship with yourself is the only thing that you can control. It's the only thing that you can rely on throughout life. You will always have yourself. And so to choose self-confidence, I wish somebody would have told me that, when I was 12. I wish I would have had that guidance. But we're all living in the same society, getting the same messages.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes, that's so good. And I wish I would have had you to say that to me as well. So I think all of us are going to be on the same page with that one. Well, I appreciate you so much for doing this. Again, still fangirling because, like I said, have listened for years, and I just, you and Tony are like two of my favorite people, even though I don't know you. So thank you again. I hope that this was a blessing to all the listeners, and if you guys haven't already subscribed to Fitness and Sushi Podcast, I would really recommend it because it is super helpful information. And where else can they reach you or find you before we go?
Well, so I'll set up a website, a redirect for your listener. So go to builtdaily.com/peace,
Okay.
and you will find a free assessment where you can check out your own relationship with food, body, exercise, and mind. And then you'll get all the information on how to connect with us from there.
Okay, awesome. And I'll also put that in the show notes in case you guys didn't get that. All right. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you so much. And we'll be back again with a new episode next week.